Julian.
The attacks on Baghdad continued. Stealth bombers by night, cruise missiles by day. The missiles used the hotel where foreign journalists stayed as a final position check before heading for their targets. Coalition prisoners were now held in Baghdad.
This character came in, looking at my teeth. You knew that something was going to happen, but again, you were hoping that maybe it wasn't. It was maybe some stupid, they're doing it for a laugh. But there's nothing you can do. And in fact, what he done, he got like a pliers or a pinchers or whatever they were, and he took the back quarter of the tooth out. I was struggling, I was screaming, and this is a demonstration of what we can do. Do you really think we're going to help you? We can just let you die. There's no problems with this.
They just yanked me up and just karate chopped from kind of, felt like the heel of the boot just into my knee. And I collapsed again, and they just pulled me up, smack, pulled me up, smack, pulled me up, smack, pulled me up, smack. And eventually, and somewhere in there, whilst they're doing that, they say, "Are you pilot or navigator? Are you pilot?" And eventually, pilot. And it just came out. I couldn't stop it. And that's when you realise you've broken to the violence. You feel a desperate sense of failure that you've let everyone down.
Do you have a message?
I thought everyone would thought I was a traitor, and that everyone would see that I'd failed, and that was the last image my family was going to see of me. I love you.
Somebody came up and he said, "We're going to execute you, or you can go on TV." And it was a stark choice of, make the broadcast or be killed.
I think this war should be stopped so we can go home. I do not agree on this war with Iraq.
And that was, I think, the ultimate shame. Everything that had gone before paled in insignificance about sitting in front of a TV camera and decrying your country, for want of a better expression.
I'm now going to show you a picture of the luckiest man in Iraq on this particular day. Keep your eye on the crosshairs. Right there. Look at here. Right through the crosshairs.
Coalition superiority was overwhelming, but the airmen were running out of targets.
And now, in his rearview mirror.
Late in January, we came to the lower part of the list, and one of those targets that we hadn't been able to get to before, because it wasn't high priority, was a bunker in the Al-Fridas area of Baghdad.
2 stealth bombers were eventually assigned to attack this target. Days before, a spy in Baghdad had reported Iraqi intelligence was using the bunker. The bunker was a public air raid shelter. 204 people, many women and children, had died. The shelters were the only places with running water and electricity. So each night, families gathered in them.
It was pretty far down the list of command and control sites, near the bottom. And in fact, I recall when Buster and I were in the car driving down to our evening meeting with General Schwarzkopf, where we'd go over the targets we were going to hit 2 days hence. He and I talked about it, and we kind of concluded that we were getting into sort of the marginal targets in the Baghdad area. We wondered momentarily if, in fact, there was some sort of a propaganda ploy. These people were Kurds that Saddam Hussein had murdered and then put in there and things like that. But it was obvious that, in fact, it was being used as an air raid shelter.
If the Allies had known about the civilians, the shelter would not have been bombed. But the Pentagon has always insisted the Iraqi intelligence service that monitored dissidents also used the building. Baghdad denies this. Wafik al-Samurai says he visited the shelter.
Part of the shelter was used by the intelligence service. There were different groups, but mostly they were people from what was called the Technical Affairs Department. They would often go in and out of the bunker. On one occasion, Saddam himself went there.
The Alfredo bunker hit gave us a major public relations and political problem. I mean, it stopped everything we were doing for about a day and a half while we paid our attention to that. And so after that, I called General Schwarzkopf. We talked about it. I said, Norm, clearly we did what we thought was right, but it turned out to be full of civilians. We've got to look at the target list a little more closely. And we got to take a look at what it is we're doing in Baghdad itself. We didn't shut down all targets in Baghdad, but I asked questions like, why are we bombing the Ba'ath Party headquarters for the 8th time? Do we think there is somebody still in the Ba'ath Party headquarters? Why are we bouncing rubble with million-dollar missiles?
The bombing campaign had crippled Iraq, but Saddam was still in power and his troops still in Kuwait. It was clear that air power alone could not win the war.
How much more hitting of strategic targets in Baghdad would have caused Saddam Hussein to move his forces out of the desert? Let's get real. Ultimately, if you want to gain Kuwait back, and if you want to do what the United Nations charged us to do, you've got to go on the ground and take it back.
On the ground, 500,000 American, British, French, and Arab troops moved to their final positions. The ground attack to liberate Kuwait would begin in 11 days. Baghdad. A ferocious air campaign was still paving the way for the liberation of Kuwait. That night's target was an intelligence headquarters. The Allies didn't realize British prisoners were inside it. Despite the destruction, Saddam Hussein was defiant. To liberate Kuwait, the Allies would have to attack on the ground.
The president said, now, Colin, you and Norm are really sure that air power alone can't do it. And my response was, Mr. President, I wish to God that I could assure you that air power alone could do it. But you can't take that chance.
Now all eyes were on Norman Schwarzkopf. In the days before the ground attack, he was haunted by the fear of massive casualties. Schwarzkopf was under pressure. His explosions of temper were common knowledge.
Working with Norm Schwarzkopf was sort of like watching a thermometer. The blood would start around the shirt collar, and then it would work its way up to the jawline and then to the ears. And by the time it got to the ears, you ought to watch out.
I would say that working for General Schwarzkopf was a privilege and an honor, but there were many times when if someone had asked me if I would rather have been in that war room or in the dental chair having a root canal without anesthesia, I probably would have chosen the dental chair.
Schwarzkopf's staff feared him. The British watched in amazement.